I mean, I've killed people. What, I should just go blow my brains out because there's no hope for me, right? My soul's fucked because I was ordered to kill someone and I did it.
I think that Barry is relating to his experience in the military, which is completely justifiable. But I think that you will all agree with me that if you kill outside of war, you're a fucking psycho.
Video. I've been on the record stating that I feel the golden age of television approximately began with the 2007 Writers Guild of America strike and ended with the series finale of Hannibal. But that isn't to say there weren't fantastic shows airing before and after. Almost as if they were making a concerted effort to prove my theory wrong, HBO in particular debuted a hat trick of masterpieces in the closing days of the 2010s. The Righteous Gemstones in 2019, The Holy Ghost to the father and son holy trinity of Danny McBride original HBO shows that were their own little hat trick, preceded in 2018 by Jesse Armstrong's masterpiece Succession, and kicking off the hot streak only a few months prior was Barry. In fact, Succession and Barry would air their series finales back-to-back on the same day in May of 2023, with both shows dividing and conquering the Drama and Comedy Emmy Awards throughout their lifespans. Even though Barry began as a black comedy that sort of morphed into a dramedy and ended up as a more or less straight-up drama over the course of its run. That was an award season strategy that FX's The Bear would become infamous for really picking up and running with, snatching up Barry's final season accolades in the process. Am I bringing this up just because I'm bitter Better Call Saul never won an Emmy? No, why would you say that? Don't be ridiculous. Lights, camera, action. Break a leg and don't say Macbeth. This is Barry.
Gene Cousineau. I look forward to this journey.
Great.
Watch your toes.
Co-created by Bill Hader of South Park Farmer No. 2 fame and Alec Berg of Mike Myers' Cat in the Hat fame, Barry tells the story of Berry Berkman, a socially withdrawn ex-Marine who is now employed as a hitman by fixer Monroe Fuches. Sent to Hollywood on a mission for the Chechen mob, Barry stumbles upon his next target in an acting class and is enthralled by the sense of community, the advice of brash instructor Gene Cousineau, and making moon eyes with the class's star student, Sally Reed. Burnt out on wet work and bristling at Fuchs' control over his life and identity, Barry opts for a clean break from the criminal world so he can reinvent himself as an actor. But the break isn't as clean as Barry hoped. It isn't long before Fuchs and the Chechen mob rope Barry into one last job. One last job that turns into more and more last jobs as the Chechen mob escalates a war with the rival Bolivian mob that puts both Barry and his fair-weather mentor Fuchs in the line of fire.
Tell him to stop. Hey, Goran!
He stops when you agree to job.
He's gonna file our fucking sheet! Say yes!
Talk about having your dental records on file. Barry is one of my favorite flavors of crime thriller. There's movies about master criminals teaching a master class as smooth operators. You've got your incompetent crooks spiraling into chaos with ill-conceived schemes, but Barry is like a master criminal who knows these schemes are all disastrously ill-conceived, but is forced by circumstances to participate in them anyways. A lot of the fun of Barry comes from the contrast between the high-stakes crime elements, which are treated with a casual lack of concern by the criminal characters, and the low-stakes world of wannabe actors who unilaterally take their craft extraordinarily seriously.
Barry actually really cares about the acting world. That's where he panics and is anxious and freaks out. The hitman world is really kind of an obligation to him.
Yeah, it's more of an obligation.
Sort of like,
Which isn't to say the show isn't able to ramp up the tension when it wants to. Just that mob warfare is treated as a banal day job, disturbed by the mundane frustrations of life just like any other day job. Like your wife putting you in the doghouse because your torture session out in the garage got too loud and you ruined your daughter's sleepover, or the car radio turning on automatically with inappropriately chipper music as you drive away from a tense showdown. That kind of stuff. The mundane nature of the criminal element is best exemplified by the character of NoHo Hank, a Chechen mobster whose genial personality would make him more suited for the hospitality industry, if he didn't also harbor a blasé attitude toward murder.
If the situation were reversed, I probably would have done the same thing you did.
You did do what I did. You tried to kill me.
Okay, well now we're getting a little he said, she said.
Hank is definitely the dark horse of the series, with the role propelling actor Anthony Carrigan's career throughout the 2020s. And just like Aaron Paul as Jesse Pinkman, the character was destined to die in early outlines of the season before Carrigan's performance convinced the production team that the character needed to stick around. Berry is renowned for its performances across the board, fitting for a show partially about acting classes, with Bill Hader making a name for himself not only as a first-time director on this project, but also as a capable dramatic actor. Even if you've never seen the series, odds are you've heard of Hader's acting chops throughout, through pop culture osmosis alone. Possibly even to an extent of his acting chops seeming overblown and putting you off, since the whole "we are not saying the same thing" scene has reached levels of film bro, this is real acting, people shouting as drama, TikTok montages that rival There Will Be Blood's "I've abandoned my child!"
We are not saying the same thing! We are not saying the same thing! If I don't do this, I don't live! I have to do this to fucking live!
If you've never seen the show, don't second guess it just because fans like to bring up the biggest shouting meltdowns out of context as showcases of Hader's abilities. Take my word for it and believe the hype, which isn't too hard if you've seen other works that flex Hader's range, like, say, Documentary Now.
We have our own stage. Isn't it beautiful? This is where I first learned to dance. I have memories of...
Another traditionally comedic actor stepping into a more played-against-type dramatic role is Henry Winkler as acting teacher Gene Cousineau. Season 1 is admittedly not the greatest showcase of his talents, since his character doesn't get all that entangled in the dramatic side of the series until the show's sophomore year. Still, he's both intense yet oddly warm as a challenging instructor, and he gets some sweet, charismatic moments while wooing Janice Moss, the LAPD detective who is, unbeknownst to him, hot on the murderous trail of his latest student.
That chicken Alec King is not the best piece of poultry you've ever had in your mouth. You can kick me right in the genitals.
Again, fitting for a series partially focused on actors, the show is filled with long takes that allow audiences to drink in emotional monologues as if they were a stage play, without distracting shot-reverse-shot editing. Even more intriguingly, several monologue scenes lock the camera on the listener rather than the speaker, allowing the audience to meticulously focus on the character's reaction, and the subtle clues of how the gears are turning in their heads. Sarah Goldberg as Sally, the character who is left longest out of the loop of the show's criminal element, gets many such examples of expressively, making a face. The thing what actors do. Much like Gene, Sally doesn't get much juicy material until year 2, but I do feel the way she and Berry strike up a romance shortly after meeting was very organic. Their obliviousness to each other's faults lets them naturally gravitate to each other. Berry's sexually non-threatening aloofness makes him innocently endearing in an industry notoriously laden with sex pests and men trying to take advantage of aspiring actresses. While Sally's self-centered focus on her acting career doesn't bother Berry one bit, since he's starved for social connections and just happy to be included.
Does this look military to you?
Are you playing someone in the military?
A medic.
I used to be a Marine, so if there's any questions you want to ask me?
No. I can ask Mike. He's an agent. He gets it.
Berry is one of those rare shows where I don't just get what it's going for, it's a show I resonated with. It's one of those rare things that almost feels like it was made for me. Part of that is the relatively grounded, but occasionally farcical or surreal, criminal caper structure, which I tend to be a sucker for. The show also predominantly focuses on themes of socially maladapted weirdos desperately grasping for community, or contending with guilt and regret by attempting to escape into a new identity. Emotional through lines which certainly speak to me. But perhaps most for me of all, I've on a number of occasions expressed my love for character actor Stephen Root, and Fuches is perhaps the mother of all Stephen Root roles. Fuches is like the ultimate black comedy bad guy. He's perpetually behind the 8-ball, routinely defeated or humiliated in cathartic and amusing ways, but when he finds an angle and can work against our protagonists, he can deviously switch into a conniving, nefarious, genuine threat. Pair that with moments where it's hard to tell exactly how much of his mentorship of Berry is calculated manipulation, and how much of it is him feeling like a spurned role model, Fuches is just chef's kiss. The character evolves so much over the years that Root was concerned he wasn't even fit to play Fuches' final villainous form in the show's closing episodes. Nah, don't sweat it, Steven. You nailed it. 10 out of 10, all the way.
You want to have a hobby or something? You could take up painting. Hitler painted. John Wayne Gacy painted. It's a good, solid hobby. Never got in the way of what they were doing.
My only minor complaint with Fuches in the first season isn't with the performance of the character, it's with the show laying on the truth of Fuches' manipulation a bit too thick. Despite being an ice-cold assassin, Berry is a pushover with a lack of self-identity, and the writers really want you to know that about him, and know that Fuches is exploiting it. Like, really, really want you to know.
Barry, do you ever ask for what you need? Or do you just quietly feel shame at your own desires while sadly doing the bidding of others?
When you decided to do this for a living, you closed the door on being able to do anything else.
Fucking sick of people telling me what I am. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Do you?
No, I don't.
Well, it makes me feel like I'm not even a person.
Fuches looks like a mentor, but he's actually the bad guy. Okay, got it. Another reason this show is right up my alley is because of the relentless pace, and despite my coverage of many slow-burning shows, rapid fire better suits my attention span, or lack thereof. 30-minute episodes at 8 episodes a season means every episode is going to be stuffed with big moments and punctuate with an exciting cliffhanger. No room for dilly-dallying. In case you didn't pick up on the occasional pot shots at made-for-streaming television peppered throughout the series, languid, overstretched seasons that go nowhere for a dozen episodes aren't really Barry's jam. The only consequence of this breakneck pacing is that, again, in the early episodes, Cousineau gets somewhat left in the dust. Cousineau doesn't spend enough time mentoring Barry to justify Fuches as the shoulder devil, Cousineau as a shoulder angel dynamic of Season 2 for my liking. Although when you take Season 3 into account, it's retroactively justifiable because Barry is revealed to be like a crazy person desperate for any sort of mentor figure's approval.
I love you, Mr. Cousineau. Do you love me?
Cousineau's relationship with Detective Janice Moss is also a bit rushed, if still very adorable. Considering Janice is not going to make it to the credits of Season 1 alive, and Gene Cousineau will spend the rest of the series attempting to avenge her death, it is a little jarring when you jump into the second season and he acts like they've been married for 20 years and he's adrift without her, when we've only seen them go on one half date and flirt a couple of times. Granted, there is a time skip of an ambiguous duration in the finale of Season 1, so you can headcanon how long they've been together until his heartbroken crusade adds up. And beyond that, you can headcanon that it hasn't been all that long, but the brief duration of their relationship left him perpetually in the honeymoon stage of love. And Gene feels robbed of a woman that he felt from only a few infatuated interactions was utterly perfect. There's nothing explicit in the show to indicate that's where he's coming from emotionally, but hey, it's a read.
But teaching's your life.
Janice was my life. Janice is my life.
I like that the series avoids the cliche avenue of making Barry an incredible actor simply because he has a sad backstory and therefore a well of emotions to draw from. The series lays bare. Barry is a bad actor. A bad actor who repeatedly stumbles into success when shocking events from his criminal life elicit the appropriate emotions from him at coincidentally opportune times. From a former theater kid perspective, one of the more fascinating aspects of Barry that I don't see discussed that much is the show's deconstruction of the belief that digging up trauma as a tool for natural performances is how you become a great performer, or on the other side of the coin, that people who haven't suffered to a sufficient degree are incapable of becoming good actors.
I didn't have a painful experience to share in acting class, so I made up this story about my uncle trying to touch my butt.
No, Uncle Lucius, I don't want to play in the laundry room. My emotions! My emotions!
It's refreshing to see a show basically say, hey, we're not endorsing this acting as makeshift therapy shit. While at the same time, Hader clearly was drawing from his own experiences when he co-created the show. In his fledgling role on Saturday Night Live, he put undue pressure on himself to keep his output going despite the emotional distress and panic attacks it caused him, because his contributions were so lauded. Just as Barry forces himself to trudge along, doing the one thing he's naturally talented at, killing. Also, from a former theater kid perspective, seeing the whole "my acting coach made me cry, it was such a powerful moment" struck a chord with me. Back in high school theater one year, they did a 4-person play that became this weird little insular thing, where we were hearing rumors of like, the teachers are goading the cast with stuff from their personal life to get real tears out of them. Although honestly, for one of the actresses, real tears shouldn't be that hard. She went to the homecoming dance with me. Just remind her of that. Boom. Waterworks. You went to the homecoming with Slip. Niagara Falls, Frankie.
Okay, you know that I had to do that, right? You know I love you. That was something.
This being an anti-hero/anti-villain series, of course the first season has to culminate in our anti-hero/anti-villain doing the really bad thing. Or in Barry's case, 2 really bad things. The first comes in the form of Berry's ex-Marine buddy, Chris. Berry is strong-armed by some meat-headed ex-Marines into bringing them along on missions, all the while desperately hoping they might rise to the occasion and he can pass the professional assassin torch on to them. But when meek little Chris, who never saw combat, tags along on a mission, unaware of the criminality and violence that awaits him, Berry is horrified that he's unwittingly roped an innocent friend into the inevitable bloodbath. Worse still, Chris cracks under the pressure, and though Berry would like nothing more than to let one of the only innocent people from his past walk free, he also realizes the only way to buy Chris's silence is with a bullet. It's a deeply tense and haunting scene, where the audience realizes just a moment before Chris that Chris has said too much to walk his potential snitch status back. Chris, and we the audience, are genuinely caught off guard by just how ruthless Berry is willing to get. Both Berry the character, and Berry the show.
I'm gonna keep my fat trap shut. And then, I promise you, no one will ever know any— Wait!
With Berry on a major losing streak, the Chechen mob decides to kill Berry and Fuches, but with a secret tip-off from NoHo Hank, Berry is able to gun this cell of the Chechen mob down first. Berry sends Fuches packing and announces his retirement. The cops are satisfied with the shootout absolving Cousineau's acting class of any involvement, which allows Janice to pursue a romance with Gene. And NoHo Hank makes peace with the charming Bolivian crime lord Cristobal, ending the mob war. Cristobal, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Despite the tragedy of Chris's death, the end of Berry Season 1 is shaping up as a tidy little conclusion for our heroes. That is, until after the time skip, where during a double date at Gene's cabin, Gene tips Janice off to Berry's hitman past, recounting a hitman confession Gene mistook as a monologue when Berry first joined the class. Alone in the woods, Janice reveals she knows the truth. So naturally, Berry abducts her, keeps her in a shed for several weeks while mulling over if he should kill her or turn himself in. Then Berry's crazy ex-girlfriend randomly finds the shed and kills Janice, freeing Berry of any moral ickiness and returning the series to the status quo. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of a different show. Berry shoots her dead at the first opportunity. A murder which doesn't really seem to bother him, because he's making himself a promise. The same promise he's made himself many, many times before. He's done with killing. Starting now.
Starting now.
Given Janice spent the better part of last season poking around the affairs of the Chechen mob, it isn't long before local PD write off her disappearance as a murder at the hands of the Chechens. Distraught at having lost the love of his life, Gene intends to cancel his acting class. The fun of using it when it comes to emotional distress is suddenly much less fun when it's his emotional distress in the hot seat.
Acting's good therapy.
You actually heard something I said?
No, what I'm saying is that we could use this as an exercise, as a whole class, and we could use it so you could talk about your feelings.
You want me to talk about my feelings? This class was about you talking about your feelings.
All right.
However, Berry is able to convince Gene to keep the class going by sharing a slightly sanitized story about the first person he killed. Berry's powerful sorta confession inspires the class's next play. Each actor will write and perform a non-fiction scene of the moment from their lives they feel most defined them, while the rest of the students quickly get to work trying to hyperbolize their own sob stories in an attempt to rival Berry's sensationalized war stories in a sort of pity-party pissing match. Berry and Sally both approach the assignment from a sideways angle. Neither of them are happy with themselves, and by extension, the moments that they feel define them. So they're going to rewrite their most pivotal moments as a method of redefining themselves. Kind of like how we all have a tendency to deliberately misremember less than proud moments from our past, to cast ourselves in a more charitable light. Only for them, it's on a larger scale with a theater full of people to reaffirm you. Berry's one bad day he wishes to rewrite was the day he saved his war buddy Albert after a gunshot. A heroic moment, if not for Berry murdering an innocent man in a fit of rage immediately after. Berry wants to omit the second part of the story and be remembered as a noble hero, not a cold-blooded killer. Though he does finally confess the truth to Mr. Cousineau behind closed doors.
Who else did you tell this story to?
In class, no one.
Good. So here's my advice. You never tell that story again as long as you live.
Meanwhile, Sally's acting reel reveals that she's been relegated to roles where she plays subservient women who get neglected and bossed around, which conjures to mind her drunken ex-husband who she eventually left but never managed to triumphantly stand up to. While we saw plenty of her very human, very competitive self-obsession when it comes to her acting career in Season 1, Season 2 does well to flesh out Sally even further by presenting her with this self-identity dilemma. Do I use the play to admit I stayed with him and reconcile with the regrets of the past? Or is this an opportunity to reinvent myself by punching up and delivering a powerful telling off? With the fictionalized ending being further tempting and a further means of reinventing myself, since it can land me major roles with producers who are looking to cynically cash in on the Me Too movement. Sally has to decide. Am I the lie I see in the world, or am I the beauty of truth? I stole that line from Dorm Life.
Payback ladies.
Yeah.
Payback ladies.
Payback ladies.
You'd be this one.
It's that time of the month for revenge.
So Sally's on the rise in our character stock watch, and with much more to chew on in year 2, so is Gene. In the wake of losing Janice, Gene attempts to reconnect with his estranged son, hoping to rebuild a bridge he burned long ago now that he has a renewed sense of value in personal connections. And he begins to form a more personal connection with Berry, learning the truth of some of Berry's more heinous actions in the war and serving as Berry's still billing by the hour shoulder to cry on. Just as Berry's former sounding board, Fuches, grows more and more untrustworthy and distant. Speaking of Fuches, I certainly jumped right into praising the character while discussing Season 1, but Season 2 showcases all the various faces of the character that make him so exceptional. Without his ringer Berry to rely on, it doesn't take long for Fuches to get arrested. In fact, it happens in the cold open of the season.
I know what that thing is. I don't know why you'd need my DNA. I was being held there against my will. Thank you. So what I remember is...
So for the first half of Season 2, Fuches is roped into wearing a wire, in a scheme to capture a confession from Berry to clear Fuches' name. But we also get to see a more sympathetic side of Fuches. While he is initially all too eager to throw Berry under the bus due to their recent bad blood, when the two begin to reconnect, Fuches does his fumbling best to spoil the sting and keep Berry safe. In the latter half of the season, we get the manipulative, intimidating side of Fuches. Cast aside by Berry when Berry learns Fuches was wearing a wire, and on a more personal note, incensed at Berry's growing closeness with new mentor figure Cousineau, Fuches goes on a vindictive quest to find Janice Moss's body and pin the murder on Cousineau. It's such a harsh and conniving scheme born from a place of utter petulance, the part of Fuches that makes him a real love-to-hate scumbag despite his myriad silly moments. It is a bit convenient that Fuches is able to stumble on the body of Janice when an entire weeks-long LAPD search party couldn't. But the series increasingly leans on cops are dumb jokes to handwave real dramatic plot points as the series goes along. And if I start nitpicking cops doing stupid things so that the plot can move forward, Season 3, we'd be here all day. And while Fuches does conveniently find the body, you could never accuse the writers of letting him find it easily. Fuches is put through hell and back on his multi-day trek through the woods. We have a sympathetic Fuches and we have a sinister Fuches, but the standout episode of Season 2 also gives us silly Fuches. After the detective making Fuches wear a wire gets a confession out of Berry, it's revealed that the detective never intended to send Berry to prison. He wants to blackmail Berry into doing a hit for him, specifically killing his ex-wife's new lover. The episode Ronnie Lily is one of the most beloved episodes of Berry, if not the most beloved. A crime thriller comedy of errors that puts all the other side plots of the series on hold, as Berry and Fuches team up to attempt this woefully sloppy assassination mission. Berry tries to get the target to simply skip town, a target who turns out to be an Olympic-level Taekwondo master with an equally skilled, almost feral daughter by his side, leading to both Berry and the target grievously wounded wandering the streets of LA, while Fuches tries to desperately hunt down the survivors and patch Berry's open wounds with superglue. It's a hilarious, bad-to-worst disaster, all tied together by the coyote and roadrunner antics of Stephen Root attempting to murder a superhumanly terrifying ninja child.
Berry. Kill her.
Just take her off your face.
I superglued my hands to the steering wheel.
With Sally, Gene, and Fuches all getting more varied and intriguing material to work with this season, there is a bit of an odd man out, and that's NoHo Hank. Now, usually in these videos when I say there's an odd man out, it means the character didn't get that much screen time. But with NoHo Hank, it's more that he's living in comic relief land while everyone else is evolving and getting their storylines entangled. It's pretty apparent the writers knew Hank was the fan favorite from the debut season, so they wanted to give audiences plenty of Hank. But most of his material this year is sort of, Harpo does something funny, riffing, and that's it. which, granted, I know, is already blasphemy to complain about at all, even as a minor quibble. Again, he is such a fan favorite that I'm sure lots of people don't even feel there's enough NoHo Hank riffing. But I'm one of those people who, like, my biggest issue with the Barbie movie was that they clearly knew they had solid gold in their hands with Ken, so they put too much Ken in the third act and messed up the pacing. Yeah, you won't hear me whining about the America Ferrera speech. This isn't Baby's first controversial take. There was too much Ken. You're playing with the big boy controversial takes now.
Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking kidding me right now? You just fucked this moment. This beautiful, tender moment with your accordion. You just whipped out your accordion and you fucked it, man.
Hank's big arc throughout the series is his partnership, eventually in both senses of the word, with Bolivian crime lord Cristobal. So with hindsight, his plotline of training a hit squad with Barry's assistance so Barry will have a replacement and can retire once and for all, does come across like wheel spinning. Barry trains a squad, which puts NoHo Hank and Cristobal at odds, then Barry kills the squad while trying to get revenge on Fuches, and Hank and Cristobal make up. Right back to where we started. I get what they were going for with one of the trainees looking up to Barry, thanking him for giving him purpose in the same way Fuches spoke when he controlled Barry's life, and Barry ultimately killing that trainee without remorse as he quite literally looks up to him. Yeah, I get it. I'm picking up what you're putting down, show, but it does kind of feel token and inessential. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. Hank is fun. Hank is funny. I really like Hank. I'm not trying to be the fun police. He's just a year behind the character development party, that's all. But bless his current comic relief heart anyways.
What if you shoot her with a thick book behind her? It'll go through her head, get stuck in book, you open up book, take out bullet, simple.
No, that's not.
It's so simple.
So what you're saying is I need to get her to read a really thick book.
I may have buried the lead earlier, but yeah, Barry guns down Hank's new recruits in a quest to kill Fuches, cementing in his mind the belief that yes, he is just a killer, it's what he does, and that life-defining moment he wished to rewrite continues to define him. With headhunters in attendance at the play, Sally makes a last-minute decision to give the people what they want rather than tell the truth. Fuches goes into hiding, Hank and Cristobal rekindle their partnership, but with Hank under a new, babysitting Chechen eye. And Gene is released from custody for the murder of Janice after some quick thinking from Barry pins the crime on the Chechens. See what I did there? With pin? Season 2 continues the excellence of Barry, further developing the cast while refusing to take their foot off the narrative gas pedal. And with Cousineau recalling the spiteful parting words of Fuches after finding Janice's body, this Barry train ain't slowing down.
Berry Berkman did this.
Season 3 would mark a handful of changes behind the scenes with the production of the series. While seasons 1 and 2 were staffed by a rotating bench of directors, with Bill Hader and Alec Berg only directing the starts of each season, the finales of each season, and the standout Ronnie Lilly episode in season 2, starting with season 3, either Hader or Berg would direct every episode, and by season 4, Hader had become so creatively entrenched into the series that he directed every single episode of the show's final year on the production team's suggestion. Season 3 was also delayed significantly by the 2020 lockdowns, which ultimately had a major impact on the show's writing process. Season 3 was nearly ready to start shooting before the lockdowns, and while with seasons 1 and 2 the writers were, by their own admission, flying by the seat of their pants without a grander outline for the series as a whole, the writers were now antsy waiting around for shooting to resume, and got to work on season 4. Which then led to them rewriting more and more elements of Season 3, and by the time the series resumed shooting, the entire remainder of the series had been conceptualized. Unfortunately for Barry, this extended hiatus would impact viewership. The series had a massive surge in popularity throughout Season 2's run, with viewership nearly quadrupling, only for all that momentum to die and the ratings to plunge to nearly half of Season 1's numbers after the almost 3 years it spent off the air. I get that it returned after a long hiatus to a now overcrowded streaming market, but that precipitous drop is still surprising to me, especially given the major cliffhanger that punctuated Season 2, and doubly especially because the season premiere had a dynamite cliffhanger of its own, when Gene confronts Barry with the truth of Janice's murder at gunpoint.
Turn yourself in, or fucking die.
That's one of Berry's most iconic moments, equally nail-bitingly tense and blackly hilarious. But one other change in the show's style beyond the behind-the-scenes stuff is a marked shift in tone in seasons 3 and 4. The second half of the series is much darker and more dramatic than what came before. The characters are in much worse mental states, the violence is becoming more brutal and senseless, the stakes are more dire and result in more haunting and grim consequences. And well, in my opinion, this darker tone suits Berry, with season 3 in particular being my personal favorite run of episodes in the series. It does lead to the comedy and drama elements feeling significantly more divorced from one another. It's to such an extent that Bill Hader noted in an interview that there's only a single joke in the season finale, and it was ADR they did in post that wasn't originally in the script. Although there are some elements in the finale that I found funny in a twisted, the horror is so over-the-top comedic way, though those same scenes left my wife utterly horrified. So, to each their own. Where previously the comically collapsing crime capers got humorous peanut butter all mixed up in Berry's dramatic chocolate, now that we're all drama more or less all the time, it means the comedy in this ostensible black comedy series almost entirely comes from surreal interludes of peripheral relation to the plot. The feral ninja child from Ronnie Lily was certainly odd, but I do mean, like, we're surreal now. Like Sally's manager communicating with a network executive almost exclusively in grunts and exaggerated facial expressions, or the Bluetooth-compatible bomb that constantly announces it is, in fact, a bomb over and over in Korean, and that requires an app to detonate, an app that doesn't work so Berry has to contact tech support to troubleshoot at a critical moment. Or Fuchs, on 2 separate occasions, finding himself in hiding on an idyllic goat farm where the farmer's beautiful daughter falls in love with him, giving up his life of crime to lead a simple and contented life, then being reminded of Berry's existence, abandoning everything, and running off on a quest for vengeance. All these bits are certainly still very funny, just much more out there than anything the show has done before.
You are fucking nuts, man. Also, I know you're on a farm or something because I can hear goats in the background.
Maybe I'm at the zoo with my new best friend!
I thought you said you were at a hospital.
The specter of Chris, Berry's Marine buddy that he killed at the end of Season 1, looms over the events of Season 3, especially now that Berry has a new person he deeply cares for that he desperately doesn't want to kill. Rather than kill Cousineau, Berry is instead preoccupied with keeping his silence and winning his mentorship back by any means but killing him, scouring Hollywood for an opportunity to reignite Gene's acting career, bolstering Gene's public image with stories of his acting class helping him deal with the horror of his military service, and taking assassin jobs to shower Gene with bribe money so he'll love him, which Gene in turn showers upon his son so he'll love him. And Gene continues paying it forward by using his renewed career prospects to get gigs for old rivals he screwed over during his heyday as a hard-to-work-with actor. Maybe I'm reading too much into a throwaway line, but NoHo Hank's password on the bomb detonator app is Suddenly Seymour, a reference to the musical Little Shop of Horrors, which Gene's storyline this season shares a few parallels with. Little Shop of Horrors is about a man who increasingly puts aside his morals to enable a monster in exchange for the fame and fortune the monster can provide him, until the whole sordid, symbiotic relationship blows up in his face. At least, unless you watch the theatrical cut, where Seymour gets away with everything because test audiences hated the original ending. But let's be real. The original ending, where the killer plant eats Seymour and takes over the world, that's the real ending. Like, come on.
When suddenly, and without warning, there was this total eclipse of the sun.
Berry's efforts to repair his relationship with Gene by providing him with a facsimile of a fulfilled life could be called learning the wrong lesson from the past with Chris, but it's also a desperate grasp for acceptance from an isolated man who finally felt a connection, especially since his connection with Sally rapidly falls apart, ruining their relationship after shouting at her in front of her TV show staff, and later botching his chance to patch things up by offering psychotic gaslighting revenge schemes to get back at a network executive who slighted Sally.
So you break into her house?
Oh, she'd never know I was there. You know, the whole point is to isolate her and make her feel like she's going insane. So I would just do little things, like replace her dog with a slightly different dog.
Plus, Sally doesn't need a loose cannon by her side now that her career is in the spotlight. Now running and starring in her own television series, Sally's stardom is her own means of desperately grasping for validation. And for a while, she gets it. Maybe a little too much of it. The 98% rating her series debuts to on Rotten Tomatoes is practically a numerical means of affirming her self-worth. But when her show performs poorly with the ideal demographics on the streaming service's platform, it's cancelled while Sally is still absolutely flying on the endless dopamine of her show's success. In the wake of her show's cancellation, it becomes apparent Sally didn't learn one of the most valuable lessons that Gene Cousineau could have taught her. Don't make everyone in the industry your enemy. Despite offers for consistent work in another show's writer's room, Sally is unsatisfied with anything other than the limelight she got one fleeting, heavenly taste of. And after her former classmate and assistant Natalie lands a TV deal of her own by pandering specifically to the streaming service's algorithm, Sally flies off the handle in an obscenity-laden meltdown that's caught on camera by Natalie and released to the press, effectively ending Sally's career.
I brought you into the fold, and this is how you fucking betray me! Moved your carrots for you. You entitled cunt!
Sally returns to her ex Berry, now knowing just how much of a psycho he is, and requesting he enact some of his psycho revenge schemes on Natalie. Oh, then a thug shows up to murder Berry, and Sally is forced to violently kill him in self-defense. Which, I mean, if every cloud has a silver lining, that at least puts your career problems into perspective. Although your career is still pretty fucked. To understand why a thug would show up to kill Berry, we'll have to circle back to earlier in the season and check in on our old buddy Fuches. No longer working with the Mafia or the cops, Fuches is now posing as a private investigator named Kenneth Goulet, and aims to get revenge on Berry with the aid of, let's just say, enthusiastic amateurs. Connecting with the families of Berry's victims throughout the series, Kenneth tips them off to Berry's involvement in their deaths, in the process creating a menagerie of vigilante killers willing to take the law into their own hands. This plot introduces a lot of exciting chaos into the mix, as randos in the crowd can now just pop up and try to kill Berry at any point. It's like that point in Oblivion's main quest where all the Mythic Dawn sleeper agents activate and attempt to kill the main character as they're walking through town, usually with the same success rate.
Enough! What?
Taylor's sister's dirt bike gang gives the series what is undeniably its most spectacular set piece in a series that is otherwise about murders happening faster than you can blink. But Chris's widow comes the closest to doing the job with a near-fatal poisoning. More concerned with doing a different job, namely bringing Berry to justice legally, is Detective Moss's father, Jim. Wise to Fuches' ruse, he takes the tip off to investigate Berry, then promptly turns Fuches over to the cops, where he is arrested for his connections to the Chechen mob. Although well in captivity, Fuches stumbles on one last sucker he can send Berry's way. His FBI interrogator is Albert, the man Berry saved in the war and a friend of Chris. Fuches is willing to spill the beans on his role as a fixer, so long as he can drag Berry down with him, screaming. I love the touch with the soda can. Last time Fuches was in an interrogation room, the soda can with his DNA was just the final nail in the coffin for him totally losing control of the situation. Now, even as he's been captured, he can crack open a cold one with an air of menace. He's got one last angle to get Berry, and it's a doozy.
One day, sent Berry out on a mission, went sideways, and, well, Chris. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Saw some shit he shouldn't have.
Not that Albert does kill or incarcerate Berry at the end of the day, sparing him as payback for saving his life, but he still catches Berry in the act of disposing of a body. What follows is an incredibly captivating scene in a finale that's just a string of captivating scenes. Berry and Albert certainly don't get a The American-style parking garage type confrontation. Berry just collapses, shrieking in agony at being caught and barely able to articulate single words, all while Albert chastises him. Berry spent all season reeling from Gene Cousineau learning the truth about him. Lost Sally because she saw just a glint of the truth about him. And now that it looks like the truth about him is about to come to light for everyone, Berry is like a vampire being dragged into the sun. It's so good.
You need to tell me! Enough! Enough! Shut up!
While it may seem a bit easy that Albert pulls the "you saved my life, I'll return the favor," it's also obvious by this point. Berry's spinning too many plates, too many people are suspicious of him, too many people outright know. There's no way this day ends without Berry either on the run or behind bars. But before we get to all of Berry's chickens coming home to roost, let's catch up with NoHo Hank, who was in for an equally agonizing season finale experience. In the wake of Berry's mob massacre at the end of Season 2, Hank and Cristobal are lying low, and enjoying it quite a lot, especially because the two have fallen in love and they are lying low together. Hank's relationship with the equally incongruously chipper Cristobal is cute, and it does well to flesh out the character of NoHo Hank beyond just the guy who does funny riffing to break the show's tension. Hank's got someone to care about, which means he's got something to lose. besides just, his life. And the threat of that loss fuels Hank's storyline this season. Both men must hide their relationships from their respective feuding mafias. Very Romeo and Juliet, Capulets and Romulans. Amplifying the threat of that endeavor even further, we eventually learn that Cristobal married into his crime family, and has a wife back home. After learning of Cristobal's affair, his wife goes, "For your asses deflowered, the chair's getting powered," and snatches Cristobal back to Bolivia in a scheme to electroshock his lust for cock, which inspires Hank to travel to Bolivia on a rescue mission.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were doing, but did not want to be rude, so.
The rescue mission winds up particularly harrowing for both of them, but after the bloodshed, the two still have each other. Berry, unbeknownst to himself, has already lost Sally. The two made plans to skip town together, but Sally skipped town without him. And after an intense interrogation at the hands of Jim Moss, Gene cracks and reveals everything. Gene begs Berry to skip town while he handles the Jim Moss situation, but Berry opts to do it himself. But surprise! Turns out Cousineau is a hell of an actor after all. The entire situation turns out to be a police sting orchestrated by Jim and Gene. So Berry is arrested for the murder of Janice Moss and the attempted murder of Jim Moss. And I really like the touch where we stay inside the house as the SWAT team takes Berry away instead of focusing on the action. Lingering on Jim and the photo of Janice inside. Even with Berry behind bars for his crimes, Jim still has to live with what Berry took from him. So that's the impeccable Season 3 of Berry. Where will the series go from here? Well, as we know, the writers had a plan. But is it an Ocean's 11 plan or a superglue your hands to the steering wheel type plan? Let's enter the final season to find out.
Mr. Cousineau, are you mad at me? Because I love you.
What did you say?
I said I love you.
Hey, Berry.
Yeah.
I got you.
Berry's final season is the most divisive season, in part because the show continues to amplify the darker and edgier nature of the series, and in part because the season introduces a time skip halfway through, which is always a contentious element, even when executed well. The time skip does starkly divide Berry Season 4 into 2 half seasons, which is a crunch since even a full Berry season is only 8 half-hour episodes. The structure certainly leads to some pacing issues. Fuches needs to go from meek prison punching bag to renowned OG prison gang leader within the span of 4 episodes, and Berry and Fuches have to make peace with each other, turn rivals again, and then have Fuches back out and wish to fix things with Berry again before Berry escapes prison, all in 3 episodes. Fuches, I love you, but this will I, won't I, I'll devote my life to killing Berry, oh wait, Berry's gonna die, I'll do anything to save him, shit, is surpassing even the Will Graham-Hannibal dynamic, which is a high bar to clear.
They're gonna murder Berry Berkman!
Hey, shut
They're
up.
gonna murder Berry Berkman!
Come on, man. Calm down.
They can look at this special housing, they're gonna murder!
Meanwhile, on the story pacing front, Sally is sort of lingering around until Berry's prison escape, which I guess is kind of the point. Between the freakout video, my boyfriend being a serial killer, I've become a meme, so I'm just going to hide out with my parents. I hate it here, I'll become an acting teacher, I'll just coach this one promising student, or, yeah, my dreams are over, screw it, I'll just disappear from society with fugitive Berry. That being said, the way she's completely overwhelmed by such ridiculous, life-altering circumstances while her family just no-sells her emotions was a great insight into why Sally is so hungry for positive critical reception of her.
The guy put his hands around my neck and choked me.
Right. And the boy in LA is a murderer. You sure can pick him.
Beyond the narrative pacing issues, there's a character pacing issue, specifically when it comes to 2 characters, Gene and Hank, who are both destined to meet very grim ends in the show's finale, but whose hands are still relatively clean by the show's standards. The writers endeavor to make both characters utter bastards as quickly as possible, so those grim ends won't come across as outright cruel. But if this was the plan from as far back as the reworked Season 3, I do wish these villainous turns had been seeded better. Hank and Cristobal use their smuggler connections to break into the construction and real estate business instead of drugs, only for Hank to betray his entire team and bury them alive in a silo of their own construction sand to make peace with the Chechens, essentially signing off on Cristobal's execution in the process. And despite the wishes of Jim Moss and the advice of his agent, Gene immediately starts pitching a self-aggrandizing story of how he brought Berry Berkman to justice to reporters, despite his promises to respect Janice's memory, and his promises to keep his mouth shut to not damage the case against Berry.
I know how to press those buttons. Hey, I installed them. I love you, Berry.
You do?
You betcha.
Can you say it again?
Sure, why not?
Not trying to sound too down on the season, the stuff that works really works. The attempted prison assassination scene that provides Berry with an opportunity to escape is probably one of the most, if not the most, famous scenes in the series, for good reason, even if you just love it because it's one big documentary now reunion.
Get you everything we can.
That guy's here to kill me. He's got a weapon on him or something. That guy's here to kill me. Shit.
This is for Cristobal and Hank!
The following episode is equally electrifying. Berry is absent until the final scene, and the episode instead focuses on the paranoid people from his past who all presume they may be his first priority post-prison. The way you can hear distant police choppers in the background searching for Berry in exterior scenes adds an immersive sense of peril.
I just spoke with the DA, and he said it was a fortunate event that you're sequestered up there.
I am a sitting fucking duck, Tom!
But Berry doesn't want vengeance. He just wants Sally, and he wants it all to go away. A defeated Sally agrees, and the show resumes 8 years later. Berry and Sally live off the grid, with a son named John, whom they obsessively homeschool and shelter from the outside world and the truth of who they are. Berry has turned to megachurch religion podcasts, while Sally has turned to the bottle, all displayed over the course of a full episode that a not insignificant number of fans assumed was a dream sequence. Fuches is finally released from prison, now a feared gang leader both inside and outside the big house, and Gene has fled to Israel to hide from Berry's potential wrath. When Gene returns from Israel to combat a film dramatizing the events of Berry's life, Berry's potential wrath turns into kinetic wrath, and he returns to Los Angeles to kill Gene.
They're making a movie about us.
I'm gonna have to kill Cousineau.
In the split of what does and what doesn't work for me in the divisive season 4, it comes down to the character arcs. And I think Berry Berkman in particular got what the Maku Maku called dirt roaded. After the time skip, Berry is largely benched from the events of the series, and is instead used as a satirical tool. Satire is increasingly becoming a dirty word for me as I pen this script, because any sort of satire has a lazy baked-in defense I know I'll have to contend with. You thought this scene was stupid and didn't make sense? Well, the world is stupid and doesn't make sense, and this is just an exaggeration. Satire! So post-time skip, Berry is a riff on the prototypical megachurch attending Christian, who harps on about comforting surface-level subjects like forgiveness and salvation, but also trips over themselves to concoct reasons why they're a special exception to the doctrines of their faith that clash with their lifestyle.
This pissed me off. This gave me an intense feeling that I knew was a sign from God saying, "You got my blessing, Nicky."
Bingo.
When Berry gets to Los Angeles, he's used to satirize American gun culture, and I vaguely recall these scenes getting clowned on online when the show first aired. Isn't it horrifying how easy and quick it is to legally purchase guns in California?
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's great. Now, theoretically, Gunther, would I be able to slaughter a room full of innocent people with that weapon?
And through a series of contrivances where Gene becomes the fall guy for Berry and Fuches' crimes, Berry's death at the hands of Gene tees up a satire on the film industry's knack for reductive historical revisionism to suit general audience tastes when basing works on true stories. Turning complex historical figures or criminal cases into black and white good and evil tales that forever define the public opinion on people is an issue I can actually get heated about on occasion, so I can tip my hat to the big piss take. But do I feel it warranted basically derailing the two main characters of your show? Not really. In the end, both men fail to get what they want. Gene wants fame, not infamy, but kills Berry as soon as Berry intends to confess and is forever remembered as a criminal mastermind. And Berry wants spiritual redemption, be that his new Christian spirituality or the secular spiritual desire for absolution he harbored the rest of the series, but dies before he can clear Gene's name as a redeeming act.
I'm gonna turn myself. Oh, wow.
Let me stop myself before I come across as an absolute hater on Berry's final season. The writers seemed like they were almost self-conscious that the Berry and Gene material was a gamble, so they threw in Hanks and Fuches as a concession. Oh, is this stuff getting too heavy for you, too dull for you? Well, how about Hank and Fuches have a goofy mob war, with gadgets that comically fail and plans that spectacularly fall apart and scenes of great violence treated with casual levity, and a final scene with genuine tension and emotional heart that puts a bow on the entire series in a beautiful and heartbreaking way. I think I would like that actually, Berry writers. I'd like that very much, and thank you for not half-assing it. This is some really enjoyable stuff. Since Fuches kept his mouth shut during his 8 years in the can, jacking off into a radiator, or however that goes, he's earned the good graces of NoHo Hank and the remaining Chechens. But after Fuches drunkenly mocks the death of Cristobal during a bacchanal the night of his release, correctly assuming Hank was involved, the relationship is soured and the two begin a bitter war. A bitter war that Hank is always on the losing side of.
Is there heads?
We don't know that yet.
It's a head.
Surrendering, Hank suggests a peace offering. Fuches' most hated former mentee, Berry Berkman. Attempting to use Gene as bait, but luckily stumbling on Sally and their child John as captives instead, Hank and Fuches meet to broker a peace deal while awaiting their final showdown with an incoming, heavily armed, rescue my wife and child rage mode Berry. At their high noon, Fuches essentially spells out the defining theme of the series, the losing game of running from guilt by attempting to become someone else, recognizing his role in the story as a villain, and offers Hank a truce on a single condition.
I walk away right now. You'll never hear from me again. All you have to do is admit that you killed Cristobal.
While Hank initially breaks down into tears and confesses his involvement, anger wells up soon after, and a hail of bullets and a grenade leave almost every mobster in the room dead. Hank dies clutching the arm of his memorial Cristobal statue, Sally remains unscathed, and Fuches escorts John outside to meet Berry. Berry, armed to the teeth, shares a wordless exchange with Fuches, where Fuches seems to finally abandon his quest for revenge, once and for all, then disappears into the night. Fuches flip-flopping on fucking over Berry aside, in my eyes this showdown is the signature scene of the final season, and with Berry late to the shootout and Fuches explicitly laying out one of the major themes of the series, I hope this doesn't come across as me fanboying over Stephen Root even more, but when all is said and done, Fuches had the most cohesive arc in the final season, and anytime I rewatch it, I kind of feel like he was the main character and the show ends when he walks off into the darkness. Or, I guess it's more of like a light jog. And then the rest of the show is just 10 minutes of contrived plot points to set up the Mask Collector epilogue. So I guess let's wrap this up and do the Mask Collector.
You're finished, Cousineau.
You know, Barry, none of this would have happened if you would help me clean up that Janus mess. I thought soldiers knew how to take orders.
8 years after the 8 years after, Berry's now teen son, John, sneaks off with a friend to finally watch the biopic about his father that his mother forbade. Gene was immortalized as a conniving, manipulative, British villain behind every murder, while Berry is portrayed as a tortured, innocent action hero, confirmed to be buried with full honors at Arlington National Cemetery in real life. Again, I feel like this is one of those things where the show just threw out characterization and even, basic logic in the name of satire. Gene got railroaded, and that's the bit the writers want to go with. I get it. But, Sally was that loyal to her dead husband that she would send Gene Cousineau, a man she knows is innocent, down the river? And if it was all just in the name of covering her own ass, how am I supposed to read her modestly happy ending in the epilogue? Good for Sally, better Gene than her? Or what about Gene's agent? Or, Albert? The FBI agent who fucking knows Berry was a hitman and knows Fuches was his handler. He didn't reveal that shit after Berry's arrest? Or 8 years later when Gene was accused? Yeah, I don't know, maybe he died in those 8 years. I mentioned early on that I was going to ignore the show increasingly allowing plot developments to happen by conveniently making law enforcement ludicrously incompetent, but the whole Cousineau situation is kind of my breaking point. They wanted to do the bit and they did what they had to do and ignored what they had to ignore to get there. That being said, the sequence itself, in isolation, is a lot of fun. Pitch perfect, cliche dialogue, a mustache-twirling bad guy, annoying slow-mo action scenes, an anti-hero lead who conveniently manages to avoid any degree of moral accountability to keep the audiences comfortable. Basically, the writer's going, I bet this is what you thought the show would be when you first heard the premise. Aren't you glad this isn't the show? And yes, Berry writers, I am glad. Despite my issues with some of the character arcs and plot threads not ultimately landing for me in the show's senior year, Berry is truly something special. From the relatively grounded crime thriller elements, powerful examination of themes about self-discovery, self-loathing, and self-reinvention, and simply the roster of stellar performances realizing these complicated characters. Also, in case I forgot to mention it, Stephen Root is in it. Berry scratches a lot of my personal itches, and I don't envy Dexter Resurrection having to follow this tough act to follow when I cover it next week. That's it. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you guys. Can you comment that you love me? Can you comment it again?
It's Berry, Steven. Steven, he's in, Bill.